I haven't been in like 8 years, so I'm like, oh, this would have been a good one actually.
It was my first time last year. I loved it.
Yeah,
Everything
it's
is wrong
amazing.
for you guys.
Okay.
All right,
Okay. Sorry, I also need to like
turn myself on.
adjust the size of my text because
We're
I'm
in that part of our lives. That's mean. Yeah, I'm like,
it's bad. It's like staring at screens all day. That's what it does to you. Okay.
Cans look good?
Yeah, they look good.
Amazing.
Is it Fernando or Fernando? What do you prefer?
most people do I like Fernando.
Fernando. Okay. Fernando Hurtado is a journalist, an entrepreneur, a professor, and a storyteller who has made it his mission to tell the stories and explore the culture of U.S. Latinos. As a Mexican-American himself and former journalist at NBC, he felt called to take audiences on a journey to explore the rich Latino culture within the U.S. that is underrepresented and underserved. He does it all through his YouTube channel, In the Hyphen, which he launched last year, or a little over a year ago, and he's already amassed over 40,000 subscribers. With his platform, he's making a huge difference by telling the stories we all need to hear more of, especially in a time when Latinos in America have recently been targeted and under attack just for being who they are. Fernando is changing and expanding the narrative.
Wow, I love that. I might copy paste that. That was
Please.
good.
There's this podcast that I love. It's a food podcast that's called Ruthie's Table 4, and it's about this woman who has this Michelin star restaurant in London, and she reads the bios like in front of the people, and I was like, that's so nice. You know what I mean? I feel like it's
great.
like
yeah. Well, I spoke in a class at USC where yes, I also teach there, but I spoke in another class, and what they do is they have a student do research on the guest speaker and then read the bio to the guest speaker, and then you as a guest speaker have to call out any factual inaccuracies.
How'd I do?
That was great. No, that was spot on. You even got the launched a little more than a year ago, which is accurate.
Right. Okay, good. I
job.
caught myself now. Let me give you this is just a little thank you for being here today.
Good guest services here.
I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
just something little, but
I'll open it later.
that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
But this is not our first interview.
No.
But it's the first time we've spoken in person since that interview, which has been almost 10 years.
Yep.
Which is just funny because we've corresponded on social media and text or whatever. But I want to just kind of talk all about you as a journalist and this new entrepreneurial chapter that you've started. So again, like I said, former embassy journalist.
Yeah.
You produced a ton of stories, both in English and in Spanish. You launched a millennial news network. You covered the Olympics a few times.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about kind of the scope of what you did at NBC.
Sure. I will start by saying that NBC was my favorite corporate job ever. And it was hard to let go of, and I'll get to that in a second. But at NBC, I worked out of LA, which is unusual for the news industry because the news industry is so New York centric.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the what we call national jobs where you're doing national stories are in New York. With NBC, what they have is this team that sits in LA and produces national stories for all the NBC and Telemundo stations for digital platforms specifically. But as I left, it was increasingly more multi-platform. So it was TV streaming. And what's really cool is I got to cover the Olympics because of that. NBC as the rights holder, that was, an opportunity that I'll never forget. And I got to go 3 times. My most recent one was Paris.
Wow.
So my job basically entailed a little bit of everything. My title was manager of digital video. And in practice, it did mean I was managing digital video coverage and making sure that if the president, whoever it was at the time, said something on the economy that was important, that we had it clipped and uploaded to all the sites. It also meant that I was helping launch a millennial Gen Z news network called NBCLX. And by helping launch it, that was more of a storyteller role where I was reporting on camera. And then the other part of the job was training journalists on best practices for digital. So it was great because it filled so many parts of my brain.
Yeah.
Except one, which was business.
Oh.
And what I mean by business is like the way the business worked and like how does NBC make money? I wanted to be part of those conversations.
And it was probably a steep learning curve.
Trial by fire for sure.
So then So that maybe that was one of the impeti.
Impeti- yeah, I know.
I don't know, to leave and start your own
Yes. My
and
own
your thing.
venture.
And you were also like, from what I, through my research, you were kind of just like reflecting more on your identity as a Mexican American person.
Yeah. I'm gonna fact check all your research, by the way. So I hope I'm kidding. No, so
Please
far so
do.
good. No, you're spot on. Yeah, working at NBC was great because they own Telemundo as well. So it scratched different parts of my brain. Like
Yeah.
I would feel like when I did NBC stories, I would kind of Americanize myself a little bit more. Mind you, I'm very American, grew up in Chicago, but I always felt like I didn't watch all those like classic American like hit movies that everyone watched growing up. Legally Blonde, I still haven't seen it. Like that's an example, right? And then in the same vein, I didn't quite feel Mexican enough when I was doing stories for Telemundo, which is predominantly a Spanish-speaking immigrant audience. I always felt like I was cosplaying a little. Like,
Yeah.
what would my parents want to know about, and what would my friends want to know about?
Right.
But in asking that, I never asked like, well, what would I want to know about?
Yeah.
I always felt like, oh no, you don't do that as a journalist.
Right. So, okay. So let's go back like to childhood.
Yes.
Raised in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago.
Born and raised in Chicago.
What was like your childhood like?
It was very Chicago, and what I mean by that, imagine in Chicago we don't call them brownstones like they do in New York. It's just like a brick 4-unit building. So imagine that with like 4 units. And my aunt lived in the basement unit with her one child. She was the younger aunt who just had a baby. My other aunt lived in the first floor with her 3 kids, my cousins. We lived on the second floor unit.
Wow.
And then the third floor unit was always like a rotating cast. It was like whoever was like in moving to a different place or maybe had just arrived in the United States, they would stay in the third floor unit. So it was my dad's brother.
Did you guys own the building?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So we got
cool.
to my parents and my uncle co-owned it.
Wow.
So the first and second floor unit, which was great. So it was really cool because I grew up thinking my cousins were my friends,
Right.
but also I lived with them. So it was like summer campy, but also you have the drama of like living with people and like it was like a unlocked doors policy, not policy, but like
No, yeah, it's like open house.
people, yeah, it was cool. But then it'd be 6 p.m. and then you wouldn't have food in the fridge because like one of your aunts came and grabbed the food. I learned that really bothered my dad, which makes sense because he would cook and he'd be like, "Where'd the food go?" So it was a very family oriented
That's so cool.
existence, but it was also very Chicago existence in that you would take the bus to school, and the winters were brutal, and I still don't know how I lived through those, but it was a very academic childhood too. My parents placed so much importance on education.
Wow. So what? Are you an only child?
No, do I sound like one? No,
You just didn't mention your siblings.
Right. Oh, red flag. No, I'm not. I'm a middle child. Maybe that's why.
Okay.
So what would happen is my older sister would always get new clothes. She was the first one going through everything. And then my little sister was the baby, the princess. So you get that special attention. I never felt forgotten. But I was kind of on autopilot. I
Right.
would get hand-me-downs from my twin cousins. So not only would I get one pair of pants that I didn't like, I would get 2. And so then I was like, people, a lot of middle children say this, but like I didn't get a new batch of clothes, I think, until high school.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I got new clothes.
No, I
throughout,
know, I
but
know.
like
but
a big, like,
I hear you. Yeah.
a big wardrobe update.
Right.
Yeah.
And then speaking of high school, you got a scholarship to go to boarding school in California.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds so cool and exotic because I'm like from the East Coast, like boarding school, like it's like
Prep school culture,
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't go, but I always like I'm fascinated by like that. So tell me how that happened and what it was like.
It was I think back on it, and it was such a wild card experience. Basically, I went to this magnet school, which I think the term magnet is pretty universal, right?
Yeah.
It's like a gifted school.
Right.
Public school. And what they would do, it was a predominantly Latino school. They would partner with this foundation that would send, you would apply to the foundation. And if you got their support, they would send your application out to a bunch of boarding schools. You would fill out one application. They would send it to all these boarding schools. And that was like the thing that the top kids at the school just did. And, I was one of the top kids in my grade. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to apply, you know? And I remember asking my parents, like, oh, is it cool if I apply? They're like, no, you're not going to boarding school. That's weird. Like, we're not going to let you, you're 12.
So you wanted to do it.
Well, I wanted to do it because of the accomplishment.
Yeah.
And so I was just going through the motions, and then I kept asking, come on, let me apply. Let me apply. They're like, no. And then I was like, let me apply. Like, I might not even get it. Let me just
Right.
apply. They're like, okay, apply. I apply. I get to the interview round. So the interview round, this memory is like engraved in my brain because for the interview, you go downtown. We didn't live downtown. Like we lived in the city, but like not downtown. And so that was always like, ooh, downtown.
Yeah.
You hop on, the train. And I remember that day, my mom had come home from work and the interviews were at 5 p.m. or 5:30. So we had to like book it right after she got home from work. And she was like not feeling well. And I could tell she was fine. But she just like didn't feel like going. She was like, my mom at that point in her life, like I don't want to speak for her, but she was going through some like, emotional stuff and instability. And so I felt like it was like one of her like mood swings.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you're gonna do this to me on the day that I have the in-person interviews to see if I can get it. And that's how I knew she wasn't bought in. Mm-hmm. So I was like, no, I'm like, we're going. Like it's unprofessional to not show up. She's like, fine. She's like, but we're taking a cab. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you're the one paying. So
Right.
sure. So we take the cab, and I remember doing the interviews, and I was just so excited by the prospect of getting this life-changing scholarship. Boarding schools back then were like $50K, which is still a lot of money. They're even more now.
Yeah.
$50K a year. And I remember being in the interviews, and by the end of the fourth round interview that night, I remember the executive director of the foundation. She's like, we normally don't do this. We wait until people leave to discuss. She's like, but everyone loved you, and we'd love to offer it.
Hired
And
on
I
the
was like,
spot.
yeah, I was like, and I just that feeling, I've had it very like I don't think I've actually had that feeling ever again.
Yeah.
Of a validation of wow, like me, like are you sure? But of course, like yes. And
Right.
so my mom started crying, and then we went home. They didn't make us decide on the spot, but we went home. We talked
Sign
about
here.
it, and my parents were still like, that's great, but like you're not going to boarding school. I was like, okay, let me at least send out the application to the schools, and then we'll decide. Like, okay, fine. And then, long story short, we ended up visiting the schools, and then I remember when we visited East Coast schools too, which night and day. That I got weird vibes, honestly. It was fine.
Which
It was
ones
just
did you go? Was it-
St. Mark's in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
It was very like dark and gloomy that day, and everyone was like buttoned up, and you had to cross this like massive road to get to
Yeah.
class. My mom's like, you're gonna die here, like just crossing the street. And we went to this boarding school in Carpinteria, California, near Santa Barbara, and it
Yeah.
was beautiful. It was April, and my parents were like, okay, if you really want to go, we'll support you, but always know that you can come back. And so that was like, okay. And then it wasn't until I was on the plane to my first day at that boarding school that I was like, what am I doing?
Right.
Because I was on the plane alone too.
Yeah.
I was playing alone going. I was like, what am I doing? And two, did I really want this?
Right.
I was like, I think I just did this because it was the thing to do.
For the achievement of
yes.
it.
But now I have to live it. Mm-hmm. But then it was great.
So it was like you loved it.
I loved it. It was like people
Was it
always
all
ask
boys?
me. No, it was co-ed.
Okay.
I always say it was a very normal school.
What's it called?
It's called Kate School with
Okay.
a C. Mm-hmm. It was a very normal school, and what I mean by that, it was co-ed. It was non-denominational. We didn't have to wear like suits and ties.
Oh, wow.
It was very California, but not like hippie California. It was very like subdued. And,
Yeah.
it was not an art school. And it wasn't like a STEM school either. It was like truly well-rounded, but it was beautiful. I mean, you're on top of this hill in Carpinteria. I peaked my junior year because I lived in a dorm where my room overlooked the Pacific Ocean.
Like,
Let's
outta there.
manifest. I will have that again.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was like summer camp for 4 years. I made the best friends ever who are like my siblings, and I still keep in touch with, and I've been to their weddings. So it was as good an experience as it can be, with the caveat that like I never became so aware of my social class as much as I was there. You're surrounded by super wealthy people,
Right.
and you're like, wow, Old Navy's poor. Like wearing Old Navy is poor.
Right.
And I learned there that I guess for some people it is.
So what? Well, I guess how did that make you feel?
That was hard. now I can like speak about it a little bit more freely and laughing a little, but I learned to lie about who I was at school.
Right.
I remember when we would go around every like year, you would talk about what you did that summer and or like what your parents did for work. And I remember freshman year we're going around the table and people were like, "Oh, my dad's an SVP at Goldman Sachs. My dad's a CFO or CMO." And I was like, it was getting closer to me and I was like, I knew what my parents did, but I never had really thought about it. And my dad was a forklift operator at a warehouse, a grocery warehouse, worked graveyard shift. My mom was a manager at a grocery store in Chicago. She'd had that job since high school and kind of worked her way up. She has a cool like career trajectory. But I was like, as it was getting closer to me, I'm like, wait, I'm gonna sound so like poor, for lack of a better word. And I was like, but I don't want to lie. Like, I don't want to lie about what they do. So I remember when it got to me, I was
Making
like
acronyms like
I was
FLO for forklift operator.
I did consider that. No, I said, both my parents, believe it or not, work in the food industry.
Oh.
And people were probably like, okay, that was vague. So it started with that, but it also started with like, I remember telling my mom, can you buy me this like American Apparel sweater? Because everyone has it here. And my mom was like, that's like $55.
Yeah.
No, we've never bought you a sweater that's $55.
Right.
And so I was like, I remember saving my money just so I can get like a dupe at Old Navy. Old Navy comes up a lot in the story. I remember a student called me out.
Hopefully by
Hopefully, yeah. I remember a student called me out for like wearing fake cashmere. I was like, I don't even know what cashmere is.
Yeah.
So I felt like crap. And I felt even worse though that I felt that I needed to lie about who I was.
Did that like start, because I know that you became the editor of the newspaper in high school. So like, did that kind of being immersed in a completely different environment than you were before, did that trigger like a curiosity of like, oh, like what is this other half or side of like how did your experience at boarding school like foster your curiosity, or up until then, even like when you were younger too?
That's such a good question because I never consciously thought of that, but looking back, you're right, because I remember in a lot of ways when I got to that boarding school, I realized, oh, this exists. And by this exists, I mean California, right? This weather, this beauty,
right?
This diversity, different diversity in Southern California specifically compared to Chicago. Chicago's a very diverse city as well, but in different ways. And yes, this amount of wealth, this exorbitant wealth. I was like, how do these people get this?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was like, oh my God, I need to be as wealthy as they are. Like, a spoiler, I'm not still. But I was like, there's a lot to this world. And journalism does connect you to different subcultures. And I was editor of my high school newspaper. But I will tell you that I didn't so much love that job because of the journalism part. We were doing like write-ups about the bake sale,
Yeah.
Groundbreaking stuff. What I did like about it though, because back then you still did a newspaper, was the design aspect of the newspaper. And I was like, that's so cool that you can like go in InDesign. For people who don't know, that's like where you design magazines and different, newspapers, flyers, etc. And you can create this little world that's like maybe 25 pages and everyone will be reading it at the same time.
Yeah,
that was what was really cool to me.
Interesting. So like, did you, just kind of going back to the wealth kind of like disparate, did you resent your friends?
No, I think I resented my parents.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I remember we have parents weekend where your parents visit. It's like one of the few times your parents are on campus. And I remember my mom, we were like walking around campus and I would get really worked up with like, my mom has an accent when she speaks English and like sometimes she doesn't fully understand everything. And then my dad like very broken English. And my mom one time when we were walking around campus, she said, "You're embarrassed by us, right?" And I was like, no, my initial reaction was like, of course not. But I think deep down I was. And I feel so bad now because I'm like, I'm so proud of them, for everything they've accomplished in this country. But back then, for sure, I was like, oh, I just wish you guys had different jobs.
But I think that is interesting because I think that when you see that like type of wealth, you can either go the way of like being completely resentful for the people who have it, or being like completely enchanted or curious about
Yeah.
it. And I think it speaks to like the journalist in you, because it's curiosity.
Yeah.
It's a job about curiosity, is that you didn't judge it, and like you were like, let's, and it opens the door to all these
Yeah.
other things, right?
Well, credit to those wealthy people. They were super down to earth. Like yes, that
Yeah.
guy called me out for the fake cashmere, but most people like wouldn't wear brand names or anything. That's what was surprising to me. I was like, here you have some of the wealthiest families.
And you're not an asshole.
Yeah, and they're probably wealthy because they know how to manage their money.
Right.
And here I'm like thirsting over this American Apparel hoodie that I can't afford.
So then you go to USC. Congrats, by the way. That's a
Thank you.
great school. And you major in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could talk to you about that too, but I want to kind of go to your professional life. So like you didn't go to NBC. You had like a first, like
Yeah.
your first job was something else. Like,
Don't we all have that first job?
we sure do. What was yours?
So my first job was at a new startup in, I always say DC, but it wasn't DC. It was Arlington, Virginia, technically, in the DMV. If anyone's from that area, it's kind of all one big
Oh, I think
block.
meant like at the DMV.
Right. Oh, that would have been nice. No, it was a cool startup. I remember my two options were either go to LinkedIn and like LinkedIn, the company, not go on LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn and work as a production assistant. They paid bank, and I had accepted that job
Oh.
because I did an internship in college, and they give you offers like way in advance. So
Oh, yeah.
I entered my senior year with the job offer. I was like, let me say yes.
That's great.
That's great money, you
I
know.
didn't
I was
know
really
that.
focused on the money, but I wasn't excited about the job. And then this job at this new startup in the Arlington, Virginia area comes up, and it was like a millennial news startup, and I was like, that sounds exciting. And so I go, but I didn't do my research on the company. I think now I can speak about it. We'll see where the NDA is. It's fine. It was well documented in the press. This was a hyper conservative news company that was starting a millennial news outlet, and which is fine. Do what you're gonna do, but be transparent about it.
This wasn't the one that you worked at where I interviewed
No.
you? Okay.
So it was like a local media station group.
Okay.
That was going into digital, and it was just like, it was also the 2016 election. It was just like a really like charged time to be there.
Yeah.
And it was also a really like toxic work environment where people would slam doors and you'd hear people yelling at each other, kind of like in the movies. And I was like, oh, I guess the movies are right. This is
Right.
what working in media is like. But I will say, like, to their credit, I didn't touch any of the politics stuff. I wasn't a political reporter. My beat was woe, which meant like weird, like do the weird zany stories. So I remember one of my first stories was in Miami. So I got to travel for the job with Dr. Miami, who was a surgeon Snapchatting his surgeries.
Wow.
And that was like big, groundbreaking back then. It kind of still is, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But it was like stuff like that. So to that job's credit, I did get a lot of experience, a lot of exposure to different types of people and stories. And I got to make my mistakes, as they say, in a pretty like safe environment overall. But I was on contract, so I had to be there for 3 years. And then I went to the place where you and I met, which was Attention.
Right.
Attention is still around, but back then it was like this big like social video news publisher.
Right.
So it was like those Facebook videos you see. So I was a producer editor there.
Yeah. And then you worked there, and then you went over to NBC eventually, and you're doing all this great work, like you were saying, and then you kind of, maybe we alluded to, like you kind of had this like, not a midlife crisis, maybe like a third life.
Third. Let's hope it's a third.
Right? Like you're 30-ish, and you're like, well, what does the business of journalism look like, and what are these things, and you kind of had this curiosity about yourself. So yeah, and I guess you kind of said this too, like you were kind of cosplaying between these different roles. So you kind of wanted to start maybe in the hyphen, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but like to kind of merge those two things together.
I have nothing to say.
Great.
I'm kidding. Yeah. No, yeah. So what was happening at the time at NBC, I started in 2019 there. go through COVID. It was, thankfully remained employed. We launched that network, which was super exciting.
Yeah.
And then the network that we launched, the Gen Z Millennial News Network, shut down actually after 3 years. And it was a great creative outlet for me. But when that disappeared, it was kind of like, okay, the dust settled, and now it's like find new ways to be innovative. And to my boss's credit, we found, we started doing podcasts for the division, which was really cool. But parallel to NBC, I started teaching at USC in 2021. So around like 2 years after I started NBC. And I taught this course, I still teach it, called Visual Journalism. And in that course, it's about the basics of, writing, editing, shooting digital video for news. And the last lecture that I give every semester is about the future of visual journalism. And I would always identify like 4 different trends that I was seeing, like, brand storytelling. Like a lot of companies are hiring journalists. That would be one trend. But 2 trends that were always on there were content creator journalism and AI. Like even as far back as 2021, we started seeing it. And by like year 3 of teaching that class, I'm like, wow, I have some gall to portend to know what the future of visual journalism is, but I'm not doing anything in it. And I was like, that's a choice. Like that's a choice I'm making. And like I can either push NBC to like somehow get in this realm, or like I could listen to that quiet little feeling inside of me that says, I kind of want to be a YouTuber, and I kind of want to do my own thing and be a business person, and be the storyteller, and be like the accountant, and be
Entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. And I'm like, and I'm young, I don't have kids. I'm like, I think now's the time to do it.
Did you feel like any shame about admitting that to yourself?
A little, I think, yeah.
Not that you should.
No. I get what you're saying, though. Totally. Mind you, if I felt shame for my parents working in the food industry, it sounds like, I feel shame about a lot of things. I did because, you think, did I go to college to be a YouTuber? And there's all these things about labels. Like, some people don't like the word influencer or creator. Some people don't like the word journalist, So once I figured that out, that so many people have so many troubles with so many terms, I'm like, well, call me whatever you want. I'm still going to be a journalist. I'm still going to be doing stories. And that little voice in my head was also the fire inside me that I was like, this is so exciting to me. I'm like, I really don't care actually what people think. And if I don't do this, I know for a fact that 10 years from now, I'm going to wonder, what if?
I know. It's the
what
worst.
if? And it's the worst feeling.
And
I'm
it's
like,
a great motivator.
I'd rather feel this little shame than 10 years down the line be regretting that I didn't try.
And also just going back on the kind of like living between the two like worlds a little bit, like how did that affect like your relationships, like friendships, romantically? Like how did that play?
No, I always felt, thankfully I'm surrounded by great people that I always felt like my personal life was very authentic to who I was.
Yeah.
And then going into the office, I would feel like, okay, time to put on not so much like my buttoned up shirt, but like figuratively my buttoned up shirt. And cosplay. It was exciting to a certain point, like, oh, here I am fitting in. But as soon as like I left work, it was like, oh, okay, like now I can like watch the zany YouTube videos that I watch. The journalists that I follow, that like at NBC they have very talented journalists, legacy journalists who still do great work. But I was like, I don't really want to watch them right now. I'd rather watch, Johnny Harris and Cleo Abram.
Yeah.
If anyone knows them, but they're former Vox journalists who are doing amazing work independently. And I think definitely laid the foundation for what a lot of us are doing now.
So you started in the hyphen, and I want you to talk about the name.
Yeah. I love the name. And I wish I could tell you it was like this long list of names that I had. I had 2 names. The other name was Mexis, like Nexus, but Mexis, because I was like, oh, what if I do stories about the hyphen intersection between Mexico and the U.S., culturally, financially, etc. But that seemed almost too clerical to me, that concept even. But in the hyphen was just so obvious to me because growing up, whenever I would write biographical stuff for school, I would always like talk about being Mexican American, and I always have that hyphen, and you take it for granted. You're just so used to writing it, but then you realize as you grow up, like, oh, some people just write American, which is valid too, And I was like, oh, that's cool that like, I have that hyphen, and it's that tension point like between the Mexican and American. And I was like, what if I explore stories in the hyphen? I was like, in the hyphen, that's the name. And funnily enough, when I would tell my friends, not just Latino friends, but like people who are, multiracial or, even, people who are like Norwegian American, they would get it right away. They'd be like, oh, I get it.
Interesting.
Or they'd be like, are you doing it because of this? I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So that was really validating. And it's just been such a fun hyphen to explore.
And it's like, and I think, I think you said it came from a speech that Theodore Roosevelt gave about how he said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that no true American or no like whole American exists.
He said in 1915, he gave a speech that said, there is no room for hyphenated Americans.
Right.
And I think...
What did you take that to mean?
So when I first read it, I was like, oh my gosh, he was like totally, which he was speaking about Irish Americans, Italian Americans, basically saying when you come in as an immigrant, like you have to assimilate. And actually, a historian should reach out because I've been trying to get to the real meaning of this. I don't know if he meant it as like, you're one of us, like you're American, or I don't know if he meant it as like leave your baggage at the door,
right?
You're here to be American. Right. It's hard to tell now with the rhetoric we have now.
Yeah,
I'm like, what would a president, say?
Yeah.
So if anyone knows, please let me know. But in either case, it is saying like, no. You can't be hyphenated American,
right?
Not here. Like let's be fully American. Which even if we take the more positive meaning, it's like no, let's embrace the messy nuanceness of living between two cultures.
What America is.
Everyone's living the hyphen.
Right. It's a melting pot.
Totally.
That's what it's founded.
I don't care if you've been here for 5 generations. You're actually one of the most hyphenated people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So like. I feel like this term, as you just kind of alluded to, it's super scalable, right? Because it can be like Irish Americans, Italian Americans. Right? So do you have long-term plans for it?
I do. You mentioned that like scale. Yes, I think in the hyphen is an American story.
Yeah.
In the hyphen is the United States. So I see it two ways. Like it could either grow through verticals, like in the hyphen, like Black Americans, in the hyphen, like Jewish Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You could have infinite numbers, like not me doing them, but like someone else doing those stories.
Yeah.
Or you go the other approach, which is like more vertical, and it's like in the hyphen becomes like covering modern America and modern Americana,
right.
And every story falls in the hyphen. Like there's so many subcultures within the United States, so kind of covering that route. So I see it both two directions, but right now I will say like I'm so enjoying this first phase and like really just like getting my hands dirty and learning about the business, but also about the stories, because you think you know a lot of stuff, but I've been learning so much the last year and change.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a whole other podcast to like ask you like what you've learned about like the business side of independent journalism.
So much. I actually so much that I'm launching a course at USC about it called The Business of Creator Journalism this fall.
Wow.
Because I always say I wish I'd had this course when I was at USC, but the word creator didn't even exist, so I don't think I could have.
Yeah.
But I do wish I had a course that used the word business at all. Like that word does not exist in journalism catalogs, course catalogs across the United States. And I think that is a miss. I think we need to educate journalists on how journalism makes money. It's whether you like it or not, it's a business.
Right.
In the United States, at least.
So because you quit your job to pursue in the hyphen. So tell me about like, it's a leap. It's a scary leap, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Oh,
so
terrifying.
Like what did you like? What am I trying to ask you? Like, did you like? How did you start to monetize like your first like the business side of it?
So, great question. It was the biggest question I had zero answer to before I launched, by the way. But I was like, I think I can make it work because I had done this Google News initiative, like entrepreneurship boot camp, actually, which was very empowering. They basically train journalists on how to run an independent outlet.
Yeah.
And they give you like how do you build a revenue plan? And so I'd done that a year before quitting. Like I'd been studying, but still it's one thing to like have a document with a plan and then to execute it. I got really lucky that after I launched my YouTube channel, which was January 27th, I won't forget it, 5 days after I started monetizing on YouTube because my first video went pretty viral. And so that gave me what you call like the minimum watch time that
Yeah.
YouTube requires. And so I started generating money within 5 days, and like not enough to like pay my rent, but I would say like within 3 months it was, I started getting brand deals and real money,
Yeah.
mature dollars as they say in the industry. So that was exciting. So part of the revenue comes from advertising on YouTube, and then
Yeah.
the other more real revenue comes from brand deals. Like
Right.
a brand will reach out, and it's
a
exciting to me. A
sponsored
sponsor
video.
to sponsor a YouTube video that has nothing to do with the brand. Usually, sometimes they'll, what I sell now that I'm more of a business person, I do sell short form videos. So if you have a product you're launching or a story that you think relates to the Latino community with your company, and I think I can make something that feels true to my audience, then yeah, let's do it. Let's make a sponsored video and
Yeah.
fully denoted. But yeah, so that's like, and then I do direct subscriber revenue through Patreon.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's been cool too.
What kind of content do you offer there?
That is I do like a behind the scenes, like behind the hood business podcast where I talk about real numbers within the hyphen.
Cool.
Like how much money I'm making, or like
Oh my God. I'm so like into how much money people make. Like
Yeah,
it's so
same.
interesting.
I wish we could ask everyone. Yeah.
No, me too.
So that, and then
Because I feel like you could learn, like everyone could
Yeah.
learn so much from each other.
from the transparency. Yeah, totally. Like we're probably all getting underpaid, or maybe we're all getting overpaid. No, I doubt it. But so I do that podcast, the monthly podcast, and then I do early access to videos.
Okay.
But what's been cool and what I want to test out is, there's a word for this, but like giving, kind of like how NPR does it, where you give money because you believe in the mission. I want to try that next. I want to see for like my like big recurring fans, like if they'd be willing to support the journalism.
yeah.
Like
Just
broadly.
as
Just
a whole.
and also like I have this guilt, and I know I shouldn't, of like charging monthly because that's what Patreon does. So I'm like, oh, what if it's like a one-time thing where it's like, you know, you don't have to commit to like 12 months of like supporting me. Like you could just give me a one-off, and like
Oh, right.
maybe it's $5 for you, or maybe it's $50.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're doing that month.
Right.
So that's how In the Hyphen makes money.
So like kind of talking about creator journalism. Yeah, like the creator kind of atmosphere. I think so. You did post the video. I think it was your first video on the channel where you called your mom and told her that you
Yeah.
quit your job. So I loved that because I'm so sappy in general. But like it was just so sweet and genuine and like pure, and like she gave you great advice. Like it was so maternal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so sweet. And I think like what that, like even if I had like no idea who you were at all, like even seeing that would give me such a connection to you. And I think that that's how, what a good creator does, right? They create like a connection between them and the audience. So how do you kind of reconcile, and I don't even know if you've fully done this yet, but like showing how much of your personal life you want to...
I feel like you're in my head because I think about that. I made a very conscious decision that when I left, I would have a very hard line between personal and professional, because I've never had an appetite to have my personal life become the business. And I've also always only ever known journalism as like the job that I do.
Right.
And now, having said that, I do think there is room for a little bit of malleability there, because I do think people like people.
Yeah.
And I also, I know people like people, right? We're attracted to like, oh, you have the same shirt as I do, or like I would wear that,
Yeah.
Or you grew up where I grew up. And so I am going to start, that's why I say are you in my head, because I am going to start experimenting with like what feels natural to me to share. So I really do believe in experiential journalism.
Yeah.
There's some stories I want to do that tie directly to my family.
Yeah.
Like to my grandpa, who was part of the Bracero program, which is like this big labor exchange program between the United States and Mexico. And so that touches a little bit more on like my family's immigration history. But also there are so many stories in like just being, a young American. I still say I'm young, and I am.
You're young.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's more room there that I can like give a little bit more. But right now I have had a very fine line.
Yeah. No, I mean, not that you need my advice, but I would encourage it because it's like, even when I help, like, give people advice on social media, like consulting that I do, it's like that is the thing that differentiates you from
Yeah,
any other journalist
totally.
or any other business leader, whatever,
And
you
it's what
know?
makes you you. Like if you're really
Right.
thinking about the differentiator,
Especially in like this AI
yeah,
ecosystem, like it's,
people are craving real, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited to explore that. And what's great now that I'm not at a big company, it's like if I make a decision, oh, I could start tomorrow or
Yeah.
tonight if I really
I
wanted to,
know.
which is also a little scary, but also it's so liberating.
Um, I was gonna ask you, like, what is there a story on like the new channel in the hyphen that you're most proud of, or
I hate to be the guy that says the one I just did, but I do. I'm a big believer in like pushing myself every video that I do. But I'll give you two. One
yeah,
that I loved is I did one on Afro Mexicans in Los Angeles and that community, which is bigger than we think, or bigger than I thought at least. And so that was cool because I got to meet a really awesome family that runs an Afro Mexican restaurant in the city, and through them kind of tell the story about Afro-Mexican immigration to the United States. And then one that I just did is about mariachi culture at American universities and how American universities are becoming these like incubators of mariachi talent, which is ironic because you usually think about marching bands or even like
right,
classical music, you know?
right,
We have these really storied programs that all over the US, but increasingly a lot of Texas and California schools have really real like mariachi courses. You can even get a master's in mariachi music, and I think that's a very like southern southwest story.
yeah.
And that was cool because I went to Austin for that story, so I'm trying to travel more now for
Oh,
stories
that's cool.
because it's also like a good excuse to
You
meet
can
people.
write it off.
Yeah, write it off. You got it.
What? So, do you feel like how much of your choosing or story selection comes from like what your audience like wants, or how do you kind of?
Yeah, at the very beginning, I had this like massive document with like 100 story ideas,
Yeah.
literally. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna work my way down, and I'll add stuff as life goes on. But now what's cool is I do get a lot of story ideas from my viewers, from comments, which is so cool. I always joke that my video comment section feels like a college discussion forum.
Yeah.
Because people come like really well researched.
That's
And I
cool.
don't get a lot of hate comments. Like people always ask me. I'm like, no. I'm like, do you hate me? Why are you asking? No, but it's yeah, so I think the Afro Mexican one part of it came through like someone was like, oh yeah, my family's from this state in Mexico. I was like, oh, let me look into that state.
Yeah.
And then I learned that it was like the state with the most Afro Mexicans. So things like that, or like I do short form videos too. So I learned about this. I'm forgetting his name. This young Mexican American guy in California who went to the Japanese internment camps
Oh yeah.
when the U.S. government was doing those. He went out of solidarity with his Japanese friends,
Wow.
and they let him on because they were like, sure, you look different, like
Wow.
you're not white, go. And no one checked, and that was the reviewer who told me, oh, check out this guy.
And I guess kind of like the last couple of things. So do you ever feel like, because I think you might have said before not had shame about doing this, but had hesitation, like what people might think of me if I pursue this. Like, do you ever feel that? I mean, it seems like you've completely integrated into like yourself doing this. So do you ever feel like, what are people thinking of me now? Or are you just doing it like just?
Such a good question, because I remember before I started shooting stories before I left NBC, just to like 2 stories.
Yeah.
I was like, I need something in the library before I just like leave. And I remember the first day I was gonna go shoot a story. It was a Saturday, and I had the camera and I grabbed it. It was a Saturday at noon. I'm like, I feel so stupid. Like, what am I doing? Like, no
Yeah.
one is asking me to film this story.
Right.
Oh, you think you can go do this? And I was like, I did not expect that. But I was like, this is stupid. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, Fernando, you have a job.
Why am I? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, I just need to get through this hump. And I did. And I remember that story. I felt so awkward. Mind you, I've been shooting and interviewing people for years. And I don't know why it felt. I remember when I went up to people, I was like, "Oh, I'm Fernando, and I work on NBC, but I'm launching." I'm like, "This feels so stupid." Like people are like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
But no, people were like, "Okay,
Just ask me what you want to ask me.
And then now I look back because like last weekend I went on a shoot, and now it's natural. I'm like I bring my camera everywhere. I proudly say I'm Fernando. I'm an independent journalist in the hyphen covering U.S. Latinos. Like so cool that I can say that.
Yeah.
And you're so right. Like now it's just like it's so natural, and it feels so right too.
Right.
I'm not cosplaying anymore.
Great. Full circle.
Yep.
And then, did you just get married?
I did.
Congratulations.
Try not to show it off. With this, yes, I did. A week and a half ago.
Oh my
2
God.
weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you.
And is your husband, he's
He's in the
ethnicity
hyphen.
is right. Yeah. Well, yeah. What is his?
So a lot of people think he's white. I mean, he is white, but he's Cuban Norwegian.
Oh, wow.
Right. I know people don't expect it, but Cuban Norwegian American. His mom was born in Cuba. His dad is first generation Norwegian American.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's from LA, so he is such a fascinating existence.
Right.
I do think LA locals are some of the nicest people,
Yeah.
and he is too, and his family is amazing. But yeah, it's great because we share like the Latino heritage, but very different. You know, I'm Mexican American, he's Cuban American, but only through his mom. So yeah, when you ask like the personal question, I'm like, yeah, my whole personal life is like in the hyphen.
I was gonna say you could like post your wedding video and it would be like
The
totally on
numbers.
brand.
Hey, I'll talk to the videographer. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Well, no, thank you. This was so nice to like do a one-on-one interviews last time because
you.
we were in a panel.
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much for doing this.
This was great. Thank you. It's fun to talk to people who speak the same language. We'll talk about your hyphens next time.
Okay. Oh, cool. Thank you so much.
Oh, that was fun. Thank you.